very intricate issues that we're discussing. And sometimes there is no definitive answer to the question, mainly because we cannot rely on decided cases. There are very few case law on dance copyright, and therefore we cannot, the situation is fluid. We cannot predetermine the outcome. And I think there lies the crux of the problem. As a result, choreographers themselves have very little confidence in copyright law because lawyers themselves can't give them a definitive answer, because it's still to be tested and interpreted by court decisions, and therefore there is a fluidity. And all we can do is conjecture, ask questions, and provide hypotheses.
Are we rolling, Martin?
Yeah, you good?
Yeah.
Okay. Should we just sort of start by rolling back a little bit and just ask you to say a bit about your career and how you've come to combine law and dance and choreography and whatever else you do, actually.
Yes. I come from a typical Asian home. I wanted to dance, and my parents says, "No way, Jose." So that was out of the question, and I used to sneak out from academic work to go and dance. So I was made to go to university. Age of 18, I went to university and studied law. And finished my law course and told my parents, "Now can I do what I want to do?" And they said yes. And I, very thankful to the British Council, obtained a grant to come and study at the Royal Ballet School. And enjoyed my year there and finished the course and got very interested in the study of Spanish notation. And that's why the link to text. And studied the system up to advanced certificate. And then went to dance to gain practical professional experience. And then I was injured. And then gave up dancing, or rather got injured in a mild way, but it affected the dancing, and decided, nah, it's better perhaps, as my dad said, to have a proper profession. And I went back to law, did my chambers and all that, and went into practice, and ended up as a partner in a law firm, but then decided to come back to the theatre. Came back to the Spanish Institute, became its administrator, company secretary for about 9 years. And then I joined the London Studio Centre as an administrator, and then eventually did my MA in dance studies, became a lecturer, and then I decided to do my PhD in law on the copyright of dance. So I'm a rather confused kid.
But it's all coming together at the end of the thesis, isn't it?
Yes, it's very rewarding, and the research work that I've done has really brought me on an adventure. It was a lovely journey, and I've been to areas where perhaps it's virgin territory. Very little work on it has been done. I'm not saying that there's no work been done. There's quite a lot of literature on the subject, but they are not dealt in a thesis form. And there were articles, and very good articles, and I've employed this reservoir of information in my work, and it has benefited greatly from the research that had been done on the subject.
So what do you think the key thing is that you've got out of your thesis, out of your PhD work?
The dichotomy is that dance, by tradition, relies heavily on the oral tradition. There were a few instances in history where notation actually was a universal language, and that was the Fourier system, where it was employed, the Fourier-Bouchon system, employed, but social dancing, where the steps were notated and everyone used it like the Bible, and everyone used it. But since then, when dance became professional and became perhaps more intricate, with virtuoso steps and all that. Notation was very much a esoteric activity, and notators were few and far between. However, they were used, like the Stepanov version at the Imperial Theatre, the Royal Ballet at its beginnings inherited the classics of Petipa through the use of notation. Sergeyev mounted the ballets on the Royal Ballet using the notation. So there was a kind of text that could be relied upon to reproduce, restage the works.
And so the purpose of the text at that time was to be able to reproduce rather than to claim any form of ownership, was it? Would that be a...
Yes, yes. Copyright actually, according to Clive Barnes, is a 20th century invention. And he blames it on Diaghilev, who started the idea that the choreographer, or rather he, should own the works. And Fokine took a leaf of this work and started asserting his ownership of the works. However, if you read through case law on it, the few cases that exist, choreographers like Mercine, Agnes de Mille, Balanchine actually failed to register their copyrights. And because copyright law says, in those days, that it has to be a dramatic work, mainly because when you think of it as text, there must be a text. So there must be a story. So all the abstract ballets that came into being in the 20th century, starting with Fokine's Les Sylphides, had no story. So they were denied copyright. Balanchine tried to register Anne Hutchinson's notation of his symphony in C. It was rejected. Later on, it was accepted. There was a sea change in the attitude. And then there was a lobby, strong lobby, and in the 1976 revision of the US Copyright Act, they included choreographic works as on its own category rather than underneath dramatic works, and therefore dance gained its status suddenly. This was in 1976.
Do you think it was a catalyst for the status of dance, the recognition in the law? Do you think that was an important event?
It is very much related to this socio-cultural framework that choreographers work in. At one time, choreographers were servants of the imperial households. 20th century, with the emergence of the choreographer as an independent creator, people like Fokine, Mercine, they started asserting their status. And then you go fast forward to Jerome Robbins, who was meticulous in his contracts, in asserting his rights, even to the extent of how big the font is on his name with regard to billings and program covers. So yes, it's very much to do with the choreographer. Choreographers have been keeping a very low profile as far as copyright law is concerned. There's a paucity of case law on copyright now. Maybe either because choreographers has less confidence in their ability because of the few cases that exist to assert their rights, or because choreographers are not utilitarian in their approach to their work. They don't exercise entrepreneurial rights. They're less interested in making money. They're more interested in preserving the integrity of their works, and therefore their approach to copyright perhaps has dominated their need to establish copyright.
But if we assume for a minute that copyright does indeed reside with the choreographer and the work has been fixed, what are they going to do with that? What's their entrepreneurial nature? What's it going to drive them to do with the fact that they have a work that is fixed in which copyright resides?
Yeah, there are two ways of looking at it. Fixation or documentation is essential to capturing the essence of the work, the steps. Francis Parshot, American philosopher on dance, says they're insufficient to establish the identity of the work. They are only the basis for it. Nelson Goodman thinks, likewise, that they establish the constituent elements of the work, but people like Adina Amalego and Mary Series thinks it's insufficient, it doesn't cover the style. And so there's a lot of debate on how to capture a dance work. And Copeland says it's evanescence. It resides and is cited in performance. It cannot be captured. So there's a huge debate on whether it's possible to capture a work. But I believe notation, especially because of its intricate system, known only to a few, sadly, is able to capture nuances. I mean, I'm a notator, trained notator, so even though I don't practice it, but I know I can capture even the wink of an eye in notation, or the shape of a movement, how far it is from the body, or how near to the body can be captured, which cannot be captured in a film, which cannot be captured in a video, because it's two-dimensional. Dance is three-dimensional. So and there's masking of dancers behind one another. And people have asked me, like, oh, we've been watching the video, but we don't know where we run to because someone blocked out the view of the dancer we are trying to follow. Things like that. And even now, with more sophisticated recording material, as you know, Merce Cunningham uses dance forms. It was called live forms, it's now called dance forms. On the computer, to create his works, to build his framework of his works. So he's able to capture his ideas directly, rather than through a notator or a videographer himself. And so that is a more direct account. And even that, I think, sometimes only captures patterns and without capturing the whole range of rhythms, dynamics, and use of space.
And you think you can capture that through notation?
Yes.
All of that?
Yes.
How interesting. So,
Yeah.
so what is it about, what is it that differs then with the live performance of the dance as compared to what you have notated?
Selma Jean Cohen says something which has captured my imagination a great deal. She says, she quotes Jonathan Miller and says, "You must give the work an afterlife." And I know exactly what she means. Even Balanchine said, I don't want my pieces to be museum pieces. I don't want them to be fossilized. They must live. And he constantly rewrote his works on the dancers. So when you take that into view, the basis is there. The artist, the performer, the dancer, gives the work an afterlife. And the interpretation has resonance with the time. So each time the work is produced, it's another instantation of the work that's up there, which cannot be captured really, and I believe this, entirely. But for legal terms in litigation, in order to prove infringement or derogatory treatment of a dance work, notation, film, whatever, are useful tools to establish the wrongdoing. Yes. In that sense, yes, it's useful. And then you can acquire expert witness to corroborate the evidence. And in that way, fixation and documentation is useful. But when it comes to performance, we can argue till the cows come home.
So we're going to have we have copyright then because it resides, whether it's in the notated form or whether it's because the performance has been captured on film or something like that. So copyright resides, and maybe with the choreographer or beyond. Now you've picked out two things there why it's useful to have copyright. One is if